TG Geeks, episode 148, December 18th, 2017. Genetics and Amazons? Hello and welcome to another webcast from tggeeks.com, where Ben and Keith, the Two Gay Geeks, talk about all aspects of geekdom and nerdery. Sci-fi, comics, film, horror, genre, you name it, we talk about it. I am Keith Lane, and we're coming to you from TG Squared Studios in lovely Phoenix, Arizona.
I'm actually going to improve on that stinger. I would have said jellyfish, genetics, and Amazons.
Okay.
Oh, my.
Shall we re-record this?
If you want to.
No, go ahead.
In Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah, we have a really interesting interview with Maurice Haeems, who is the
writer and
director, and as well as producer and everything else,
yeah,
for a new film that's about to come out in January, hopefully in January, maybe.
First quarter of 2013 is what they're looking at.
It's called Chimera, and wow, it's just blown up since we recorded this interview, and this was several weeks ago as of this recording.
Right.
Even. So we're going to get right into it. And this time on the show, we've got the director of a film that is soon to be released, Maurice Haeems. And welcome to the show, Maurice.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Yeah. So the new film, it has not been released. It is in post-production. They're still doing the publishing aspect of that. What is the name of this film?
So the film is called Chimera. And chimera is kind of an interesting word because it
certainly is.
Yeah, it represents, if you look in the dictionary, there's kind of three meanings to that word, and all three apply to our film. The first, I think, that most people are familiar with is that it is a mythological beast. And the other time, the lesser known meanings that you see sometimes used in literature and language is chimera as being a dream, a fantasy, or some desire, and the third sort of meaning, which I think most closely applies to our film, is in genetics, where an organism that has the genetic material of two different species is also called a chimera.
Right. Mm-hmm. Fascinating. So, and this film, before we talk about what the film is kind of about, you've given us a little taste of that. Tell us about your background and how did you get into filmmaking? Because you have a very fascinating background. You've done a little bit of everything.
Fascinating. That's an understatement. Oh my God. I mean, you've lived three lives based on everything I've read here.
How old are you really? 412.
I've been very fortunate to have been able to, coming where I came from, I've been very fortunate to have been able to wear a couple different hats. I started my life as an engineer, and I'm not sure if I wrote. I always loved writing. I loved the arts, but I grew up in India in a very kind of lower middle class environment. And India back then was really very developing country. Mm-hmm. I mean, it still is, but back then it was even more so. And there weren't as many opportunities, and I didn't have the confidence in myself. And I chose a more traditional path. I was really good at math and physics and chemistry, and so I followed sort of this conventional path. And I went to engineering school. I went to a great engineering school, and I embarked on my life as an engineer. And my job took me to London. I lived and worked in Hong Kong, in Singapore, and Taiwan. I lived in Taipei, the capital, and then I came to the U.S. in '95 to get an MBA. And I was on the East Coast. I went to the Wharton Business School in Philadelphia. After that, I worked as an investment banker on Wall Street.
Wow! No, okay, that is a serious left turn.
that was a big time. And I think what the Wall Street firms liked about candidates such as myself is we were very quantitative, and that I think is something and analytical.
Right.
That kind of thinking I think they valued, and for me it was just a fantastic exposure to the way business is done. Wall Street is really the hub of the universe as far as corporate finance
right.
Is concerned, and so it was a tremendous experience for me. I loved that. And then a few years of doing that, we were in the middle of the whole .com 1.0.
Oh yeah,
right.
and so
the beginning of the intertubes.
I caught the tail end of that.
Yeah,
so when .com was at its peak, when Amazon and eBay were getting started, I was still. I hadn't yet come to business school, but I think by late 90s, when I started becoming interested in the internet, it was still 1.0, but it was kind of the tail end of that. But a couple business school friends and I started our first software company. And that company was called Mentrix, and we had a good run with it. And then in 2003, we sold that company, and I took some time off, and I had a young family, young kids at the time. And then in 2005, I got back into the game, and I did the second company, and I've been involved in the software business ever since. But it's kind of a long question. Yes, I'm trying to get.
Oh, that's okay.
Well, I'm still completely flummoxed over how you go from being an engineer to an investment banker to owning a software company. It's like, I mean, wow. I'm trying to connect the threads here, and it's making my head hurt.
Yeah, all along, I think what I used as my sort of as the principle to guide me was what do I find interesting in this moment?
Right.
And nothing wrong with that.
And I decided once I had worked for a couple of years, I had enough. I was successful. I was fortunate enough to have a good boss and good employers, and I was successful enough at what I did that I gained some financial security pretty early in my career, and I just felt like I should do what I thought was going to be interesting and fun, as opposed to making these decisions driven by money.
Right.
And intellectual curiosity drove me more than anything else. And I didn't want to. I was intrigued by finance, and so when I was I think I was 26 or 27, 20, I forget how old I was when I decided to apply to business school. And it was I don't want to miss out having worked on Wall Street. I want to try that. And that's why I applied to Wharton, which I thought was the best, and I think it is a really good school for business, but in particular for finance. And I just didn't want to sort of live my life without having tried that. And then when the internet was happening, the thought was, if my grandkids ask me, you were there when everything happened, and what did you do? Were you just a bystander? And I was like, that kind of would be lame.
Wow.
So I said, hey, let me find something to do.
Right.
And I was very happy on Wall Street. I loved my job. I was working for Morgan Stanley, which I think is,
wow, that's a name.
Yes, a name, and I was very happy there, and it's a great company, and I can't say enough good things about them, and they treated me very fairly. But I wanted to try being a software entrepreneur, and so I kind of did that, and that was the same thought that eventually, 10 years later, I began thinking again as to what else I wanted to do. I felt I was still relatively young, not by the standards of other filmmakers, but by my standards. I felt I had still, some energy, and I was in reasonably good health. And when I did some introspection, by that time I was in my late 40s. I decided that I wanted to go back to my original sort of love, which was writing and storytelling and filmmaking. And it was late, but I think not too late. And so I rolled the dice, and here I am.
Well, it's, if anything, it's a testament to other people to say that it's never too late to embark on your passion.
Right.
Yeah, and a new journey. I mean, I think if you're one of the fortunate few who knows exactly what they want when they're a teenager or when they're 12 years old, and they can follow that, through the rest of their life, I think that's the best case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't happen with me.
I don't think it happens with most people.
Yeah, I think you're right. It does not happen with most people
because
it's kind of many people don't know what it is that they want, and the ones who do sometimes aren't. Yeah, I like doing X, but I don't know if I can make a living doing that thing.
Yeah,
and so practical considerations govern, and you choose something that, okay, at least this is going to pay the bills.
Exactly.
Well, that sort of mirrors what we do. I mean, not to make this about us, but that's, I mean, we've been at this game we're coming up on 4 years now at doing this, but we still have our day jobs because, that right. pays the bills, it puts food on the table, and it keeps the lights on.
Absolutely.
But here we are, we're in our mid-50s, and only
late 50s.
Well, mid for me.
Mid to late.
Mid to late. Okay, fine. I'm trying to be nice about this. Yes, go ahead and just.
But no one's counting. No one's counting.
Just throw trash on it. That's fine. Whatever. But the fact is that here we are. We started this in our early to mid 50s. Thank you very much. And we're doing it because it's just something that we really love doing. So again, it's another. What you're sharing with us is, as I said, this is it's a testament to the fact that you're never too old to embark on a passion, and I can only applaud you for having the foresight and the courage to do that, because I don't think a lot of people, they still may have that vision, but they're too afraid to want to actually take that charge, but you had the courage to go ahead and do that. So, I tip my hat to you for
thank you
for doing that.
Thank you. And it's scary. It is scary. To anybody who's considering doing anything like this, I completely empathize and understand why you would hesitate, because it's scary as hell to do it later in your life. You have so much more to lose in terms of falling flat on your face.
Oh, yeah. Especially if you're trying to do it full time. I've known since a teenager what I wanted to do, and that was to be rich. But I had to figure out some way to pay the bills.
Okay, I have to have my daytime job until I can become rich. Okay.
Yeah.
So
until I'm going to be rich, I'm going to drive the limo.
Yeah, exactly. But I read in your bio that you sent came from Patricia, was that you were the oldest person in your film school class, and I found that fascinating. But I also found the way you looked at it, you had something to offer, and you figured out what your life is about and what you want to do for these people, and you have a different perspective on that. And these younger people are still trying to figure out what is life all about. And
I think that gives people like you all and I a certain advantage. And I guess everybody gets it when they get to be 50 years old. But you've lived a life, you've experienced things, and as a result, you have a worldview which I think can color, especially if it's a creative endeavor, color stories, color the way, for example, you're running the interview, the way you interact with your guests, and I think it makes a big difference. I think it brings a maturity into the interaction that, some young, I shouldn't shouldn't generalize, because there are some young people who just produce amazing.
We know a number.
Yeah.
Of them.
Yeah. I mean, we're not eschewing what the young people do.
Bad-mouthing young people.
No,
It's just,
by no means. But
we have a different perspective on life.
Well,
and it colors what we do.
Well, it's a mirror to Maurice. It's a mirror to what you said earlier about just life in general. But the film school, that's just a smaller microcosm of that general worldview of people in general, and the different ages that they are, and when their ideas begin to solidify. Yeah, in most cases, most young people, they don't quite have that locked-in idea of what they want to do. There are a few that do. I mean,
there are a few, yeah.
We've met some young filmmakers who are just unbelievably amazing.
Of course.
But at the same time, as Keith said, a lot of these younger filmmakers, they're still trying to figure their way through and what their vision is going to be. And then here you come in, I hate to say this, but so pardon the expression, you become the elder statesman, but you come in with this focus now. And I can only imagine what that might have done for them, what kind of subliminal benefits they may be getting out of just their association with you in class.
Yeah. I think, like, for example, I don't know if Patricia mentioned this or if it's in the piece that she sent to you, but the way this thing started, so I decided that I wanted to come back to storytelling, filmmaking, writing, and what I did for my birthday, I think it was my 47th birthday, is I bought myself a filmmaking, an 8-week filmmaking class. And I went to this class, and I was the oldest there. I did it. They trimmed the class down to only 4 weeks because everybody else wanted to do only 4 weeks. And so I got only half the experience, but it was enough to sort of, wet my beak, and I knew that I was charged up about this. And my birthday's in October, so I'd done this. I bought the class in October. I went to the class in November. And then for Christmas, I bought myself an 8 weeks a screenwriting class.
Wow.
And the way they sold me on the class is they said, look, if you come in here with an idea, and if you follow the schedule and meet every deadline, every homework assignment that you're given, you will leave here in 8 weeks with a finished first draft. And to me, that was just fantastic, because I'm not afraid of the work. I just didn't have the structure and the framework for how to do this. And I had these ideas floating around my head. And I think I was, a very focused student, even though we had all these younger people in the class. And I kind of enjoyed hanging out with them and being in the class with them. But I was extreme. There were some nights, the school was about an hour and 20 minutes away from where I live. And so I'd drive out there, and some nights I wouldn't go back. I'd just check into like a Holiday Inn and stay there and write, because I wanted to get my pages done, wanted to get the homework done. And I was determined in 8 weeks to have that first draft.
Right.
So it was like laser focus for me.
Right. And that kind of informs this film that you made, because you did a lot of research in that first draft. I assume that you had a lot of the research done. And
yes.
So tell us, you really were super intensive on your research for
I spent maybe 6 months, and my research was mostly reading and just taking notes, educating myself. So right. What had happened is, there were a couple of sort of medical type situations in my family that made me very curious about the human body and how it works, and what is the future of medicine.
Right.
And as I began looking at all of that, I realized how little I knew. I mean, in India, when you are going to be, if you determine that you want to be an engineer, they let you drop biology after the 10th grade. So,
wow.
I had completely I was so focused on math and calculus and statistics and probability and physics and and all of that and mechanics, and that I had neglected sort of all of that, and then when I was like 47 years old, I started reading and refreshing my mind on that subject matter, and it was fascinating. The human body was this most amazing machine that obviously cannot be replicated by man yet. And the more I read, the more I realized I didn't know. And so I spent 6 months where every free moment I was either reading a book on biology or genetics, or research papers that I could find. And this, thankfully, with the internet, there's so much free information that's available. I just did that for about 6 months as I was trying to formulate the ideas that you see in Chimera. And my goal was, I set myself certain constraints as I was writing the story. The first constraint was I didn't want the science to be so fantastical that it becomes a science fantasy as opposed to science fiction. Right. And I guess it's a fine difference. But I wanted it to be somewhat within the realm of possibilities, that it could happen in the next 50 years.
Right. Mm-hmm. And speaking of, just recently, they've actually done some genetic engineering on a live person. So
I read about that.
Who knows how that's going to turn out? But
how that's going to turn out?
Really, you're kind of ahead of the game here.
I think that's what science fiction, the best science fiction, kind of does. That is it goes out and looks at what may happen in the future and prepares us, and we think about those issues, because every development that's going to take place brings with it certain ethical questions. How is this going to affect my life? There are behavioral things. It's going to change the way I perceive my reality.
Right.
I think it's interesting to play these hypothetical games.
Right. And we're big fans of hard science fiction. So,
very much.
I mean, and we're big fans of science fiction, period, but hard science fiction is really, I mean, if it's believable, oh my gosh, it's fascinating.
Then it becomes even more, I also love science fiction, so I'm kind of like you guys. I love everything. But when it's hard science fiction, then I'm just hooked,
just glued to the seat.
The book you're thinking, what would I do if that happened? Well, how would I react? And it's just you go off on all these tangents, which I think are fantastic sort of mental exercises.
Yeah.
There's something else that I've noticed with Chimera is that you seem to have a fascination for the thriller / horror genre. Where does that come from in terms of your creative process? I mean, what was it that spurred you to add that element to the story?
Yes, an interesting question. I'm not particularly. I think if you ask me what's your favorite genre, hands down it's science fiction. Mm-hmm. I like thrillers. I like horror films as well. I mean, I like all kinds of films. So I'm kind of broad and indiscriminate, and I like everything.
There's nothing wrong with that. I'm the same way.
That's us too. I mean, we more science fiction.
Yeah, everything that's well done is a pleasure to watch and enjoy and appreciate. Mm-hmm. And it could be in any genre, but there's the darker films appeal to me a little bit more, because I feel that sometimes the story is done a disservice when you push it towards necessarily. I can understand we all want uplifting and optimistic stories, but oftentimes to truly capture, I think, an idea, you have to go where it takes you, even if that's on the dark side, if you will.
We always want the utopian story, but there's nothing wrong with the the dark and brooding
Yeah,
story.
yeah.
No, I mean,
and I think
as long as we don't, as long as we're not just kind of like, wrapping ourselves around it like it's a blanket or something. I mean,
Right.
because I've seen some filmmakers that just they relish in dystopian society or the dark psychological thinking to the point where it's almost like, you come out of that moving experience and you just want to kill yourself because you've lost all sense of hope and optimism for the future. You don't want anything like that. To dip a toe into the darker, into the dark side, it can be fun.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. I agree with you. And so, yeah, I think a movie, I mean, in the end, it has to entertain.
Oh, yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Otherwise, it becomes, and I love documentaries, but I didn't set out to make a documentary. And so what I shouldn't do, I felt my duty as a filmmaker was not to deviate from my purpose. And my purpose was first and foremost to entertain, to make a story that people enjoy watching. And so I have to stay true to my purpose. And so you need a little bit of a thriller element. You need a little bit of a horror element.
Interesting.
Because otherwise it's not entertaining.
Interesting. I like that answer very much because I was reminded of a film festival that Keith and I attended a few years back here in Phoenix. It was just a little sci-fi film fest. And they did one film. There was one little science fiction short that dealt with quantum physics, entanglement. I mean, all of that. And while it was an endlessly fascinating concept, and I loved it was like as hard science fiction as you could possibly get. But that's all it was just very hard sci-fi. Was I entertained by it? No, I was fascinated by it, but I found myself not actually, when it was over, I wasn't entertained by it. I found myself just more trying to unravel all of the scientific concepts that the short film presented. But with the thriller, as you did, I think it gives more of a roller coaster. There's more of a journey that I think that you can take the viewer on now.
Yeah.
That's what I hoped that's what I set out to achieve, because I didn't want to be, pedantic here. I'm telling people, oh, look how something, look at this development in science, isn't this cool, and, learn about this. I mean, there's a market for that, and there's a place and a time for that, but that was not the journey that I wanted to pursue. So what I wanted to do was make a film that we'd enjoy watching, but it had enough science in it that hopefully you'd think about, oh my God, if this really happened, then wouldn't it be cool? How would it be? What would the world be like? What would I do? And if you ask those questions, then I think I've done my job. And so I think without having some roller coaster in a film, to sit there for 80 or 90 or 120 minutes and watch it, unless you're in the framework of, I'm in school, I want to learn. If you're going to a theater or you're turning it on Netflix or wherever it ends up being consumed, you want to be entertained.
Right. So we've talked all around this film. So
let's start talking about the film.
So give us a little synopsis of what this film is all about, without giving anything away. And
nothing spoilery. Obviously,
it's hard. It's hard not to talk about this film without giving something away. But I think that you can.
Oh, I think we can do it. I think we can talk about the movie without giving away any surprises.
Yeah, I think we've done pretty good so far. We've kind of talked about, I guess we've danced around it, but, well, the film's about a man who is on a quest to save the lives of his children. Our protagonist is a brilliant scientist by the name of Quint, Dr. Peter Quint, and his wife has succumbed to a genetic disease, and he finds out his children have the same disease, and he's going to lose them as well. And the film is about how he takes matters into his own hands, and he bypasses the traditional treatments and the healthcare system. He holds up in a little research facility where he does all these experiments, including some experiments on his own kids, but with this noble desire of saving them.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay.
And
that pretty well. That's a good synopsis, I think.
Yeah,
I
and
think
then
so.
everything
Maybe
that comes along with that, and other elements that are there, and so it is really a fascinating film. I want to talk about the people that were in the film.
Yes.
Yes, this cast. Okay. Wow. I must admit, I was a bit pleased with some of the people we saw in this film.
Yeah. I think I'm not sure who you're referring to, but
Well,
I'm a first-time director.
Starting off with Peter Quint.
Yeah.
I
Henry Ian Cusick.
You know, for people who, if the name sounds a little bit familiar, all I would have to do is take a look at the series Lost.
That's right. He was phenomenal in that, and
He's a great actor.
he's a fantastic actor. He's so intense, and yet he's so humane. And so there's a tenderness, but there's also an intensity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was the perfect Quint, and we were just so thrilled that he agreed to play this role.
So let's talk about that. This is an independent film that you've got going here.
Yes.
How do you approach someone like Henry Ian Cusick to say, I've got this script, would you take a look at that? I mean, how do you get this guy?
Oh my God, that I have to for that I really have to sort of acknowledge the contribution of our casting director, Mark Tillman, who's out of LA, and he was sort of one of the early people who read the script, bought into the vision, and he was a big supporter when we had nothing. And he worked tirelessly for this film, and then I think we were about a month to go, and we didn't have our lead actor, and he had got the script to Ian's manager, I think, who had read it, had passed it on to Ian, and Mark just followed up persistently and arranged for me to have a Skype with Ian. And once we talked, I think he really liked the idea, and then things fell in place. But it was just, I think, 6 months of hard work on Mark's part to make it all happen.
Wow.
And
his depth of every emotion across the board, to the humanity, to the inhumanity, to the, without saying too much, all of the places that he went, his ability to show that on the screen with sometimes limited dialogue was great.
Well, that's a testament to his acting. I mean, there's a reason why the man is an Emmy nominee.
Exactly. There's a reason why. You're absolutely right. I mean, this character had an arc, and he's a very prominent part of this film. He's obviously our protagonist, but like you said, oftentimes there's not a lot of dialogue for him to tell you what he's feeling. I mean, we try to keep the exposition down to the minimum, and he's done a tremendous ability to communicate through his eyes, through just how he stands, through his body language. It's uncanny what he is able to achieve.
So since we've talked about the protagonist, let's talk about the antagonist.
Yes.
And that is, we're talking about another award nominee actress.
Yes.
We're talking Kathleen Quinlan. Holy moly.
Oh, yeah, we were blessed.
Getting her? Wow.
Oh, yeah, we were, and that happened. I mean, we had a longer shoot planned, and so it spanned almost 5 weeks. So it was like 23 days, I think. And we were into, I think, day 12, and we still didn't have that role of Masterson. cast. We already started shooting. We were like 2.5 weeks in.
Yikes!
And yeah, we were getting really nervous. We had the way we planned the schedule is we needed whoever played Masterson. We needed her in Fitchburg. We shot this film in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. We needed her to be in Fitchburg for only a week, so we'd compress the schedule, and we had left that for the last week. And we didn't have anyone. And then Mark, again, worked his magic. I don't know what he did, how he got through to the agent and the managers, but he was able to get me on the phone with Kathleen, who had read the script and who had liked the role and liked the script, the story. And we had one phone call, and then 4 days later, she was in Fitchburg. So I can't stress how important it is to have this your really strong casting director on your team.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And she was fantastic too.
Yes, in another the other documentation that we received from Patricia, apparently she more than bought into this, because I guess she was like asking about motivations, et cetera, in order to really understand her character fully.
Yeah, she because one of the things that she's the antagonist. However, one of the things that we wanted to maintain is, and I truly believe that nobody is sort of pure evil, or for that matter, on the flip side of that, all pure goodness.
Right. Exactly. Everything's shades of gray.
Everything's shades of gray, and I think for her character, also the motivations have to be very human, very personal, and I think she brought that out really well. And if there were times as a first-time writer, I think I know now what I did wrong, and she pointed that out. Like, my character wouldn't say this here because it just doesn't fit, and then I'd have to write a new line, or she and I would write a new line while right at that spot, so that she could say that. And so I'm glad she pushed me when she did, because her experience, and Ian did the same thing, because Ian's also a very intelligent actor, and both of them would really push back and say, hey, look, my character wouldn't do this. They owned their characters to the point where they'd stand up for them and not let the character do something that was illogical.
Right, so more method acting.
Well, it's not just that, but that speaks also to the quality of the story, that obviously they each saw something there that was worthy of them intellectually and emotionally investing themselves into, in order to be able to offer this, I don't call it pushback, but for them to offer their own contributions as to how they felt their characters should behave or what they should say under any given circumstance. That's got to say something about the work itself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The pushback was never like anybody being difficult. That was never that never happened. The pushback came from sort of a very positive and productive place, which is, how can we make this scene more compelling? How can we make this better? How can we make it more fit the story better? Mm-hmm. And so, for me, as the writer and the director, I welcomed that. I wish I had had access to them when I was writing. If I had been able to talk to Kathleen, 3 months before we started shooting, and she had asked me those questions 3 months before, I would have been able to solve these problems. But obviously, as an indie film, you don't have time to rehearse. You just get on there on the day, you block it, and you do it. And same thing with Ian too. It was just something that we did on the day, but luckily, I think we caught whatever. I don't know. I don't think we caught all of them. I'm sure there's things that we missed, but we caught many. There would have been errors, I think, for the character, because the character wouldn't logically have done that, but it was written on the page.
Well, I don't think there's anything new in that. I've read many stories and interviews with even big name directors and writers stating how while they were on the set, because of the way a certain scene was playing or the way certain chemistry was going, or maybe an actor would say, I think this might work better. I mean, an on-the-fly rewrite is nothing new.
No,
I mean, it happens in the big studio.
It drives the AD mad, and we had a great AD, but I think, but yeah, we would handwrite it, and then we'd run out and make copies, and we'd pass that around, and 10 minutes later, we're doing the scene with the new lines. But looking back, I think I'm glad we did it.
Yeah.
I'm glad we were not rigid and sort of, I'm glad we were flexible. I think it made for a better film.
So there's one other character in this film that has a rather special relationship to you, if I'm correct in that.
Yes.
Well,
there's actually two.
Two?
There's actually there's three kids in the film. All three have a special relationship to me. So the two children of Peter Quint. The little boy is my son. I have three kids, and he's my youngest. Then the little girl is my friend and business partner who co-produced Chimera with me. Is his daughter, and the third child, who's there just a little bit in the very end and in a dream sequence, is actually my nephew.
Ah,
fascinating! Wow.
So yeah, there's three kids in the film, and all three have a special relationship, to me personally.
Right. So when did you shoot this film? This was looks like a couple of years ago.
A year and a half ago.
Yeah.
So we wanted to shoot in the winter, but being an indie film, I felt that might have been sort of the best. The cold, and we were in New England, central Massachusetts. We had 8 feet of snow on the ground, and it would have been beautiful. But it was just, we didn't have the resources and the infrastructure, I think, to deal with that weather.
Right.
And we were not able, so we delayed until the spring, and we shot in the spring.
Wow.
So, but we shot in this place. We were really fortunate to have found this 30-acre abandoned biochemical research facility. And a lot of the production design that you see was already, it was just there.
Mm-hmm.
It was like they were waiting for us to come in and film this particular story there.
Oh, wow, you build it, they will come.
Exactly.
That's kind of what happened.
That's fantastic. So let's ask this then. I know a lot of indie film writers and creators, they don't like to talk about, how much money it costs to actually make the film. But let's talk about the fundraising process, because, you got to pay your staff. You've got at least two big name actors in Ian and in Kathleen Quinlan.
Yes.
So obviously, unless they're like feeling unbelievably generous and saying, "Oh, sure, I'll just do it because I want to." Obviously, there's a cost. There's some kind of overhead to make a movie like Chimera. So how did you go about? I mean, it's independent, so you don't have the big studio backing. Mm-hmm. How did you go about in raising the funds? Because we have a big independent filmmaker audience. So
okay.
I'm sure they'd be fascinated to know what did you do and your business partner do in order to get this film funded so that it could be filmed.
Yeah, other than you took your checkbook out and wrote a check.
Yeah, other than that.
Right, and we did. I mean, part of what we did is Jay and I also have skin in the game. We also put some of our own money on the line because my belief is nothing motivates you better than having your own having stakes. Mm-hmm. But what in our fundraising process maybe a little different. Our experience is different from other indie filmmakers because Jay and I both have had a 25-year career in business before we became filmmakers.
Right.
So we have a track record of raising money for other ventures. And we have a track record of returning money to investors and giving them an ROI that they are happy with. And that is what we were able, that goodwill is what we were able to call upon in order to raise the money for Chimera. So in that sense, I think being an older filmmaker who's come from a more non-traditional route benefited us,
right,
in some ways. Yeah.
So, and it really boils down to your network.
It really does. Yes,
yeah.
It does boil down to our network. The one thing we didn't do is we did not make promises that we know we're going to be unable to keep.
Right.
So we never told anyone that we know how much or when or even how we're going to get a return on this capital.
Right.
Everybody knows this is risky. This is a risky project. There may or may not be a return. We might lose everything. Because they know Jay and they know me, I think they feel confident that while we can't guarantee the final outcome, they can be assured that we will leave no stone unturned for this film to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Right.
This film will not fail because of laziness or, because for lack of trying. This film may fail because of some other reason. People don't like it. There's no way to control that.
Right.
Or suddenly, whatever, something else happens.
Right.
But not for want of effort.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I don't think that it's going to fail because people don't like it. Because
no.
If they don't like it, there's something wrong. Because
So obviously this isn't the only film that you're going to be working on. Obviously you must have other projects coming up. So anything to look forward to in the future for you?
Yes, I've already written sort of another science fiction film, which I guess in some ways is same hard science fiction, same genre as this. I think a little bit darker, maybe a little bit more of the thriller/horror aspect. I've finished my first draft, and I have the benefit of being able to go back to the same group of investors, and there's a willingness to support this project as well. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that I don't want to rush anything because I still have Chimera that I want to see it find a home. It needs to get on. It needs to have a play on a couple of festivals.
Yeah, it needs to circulate, obviously. So yeah, you don't want to. I've known many filmmakers who, they're overlapping, and if you have the means to do so, then great. But personally, I think it's a bad idea. I think you're better off suited, focusing on the project of the day. So yeah, Chimera definitely needs that kind of focus.
And also I think, some filmmakers, I think they have the benefit of working with, let's say, a seasoned producer. So if you're a director and you've got a producer, a distributor, a sales agent who's taking the ball and running with it, the writer-director can then move on to his other project because he's not involved with that part of it. But in our case, I'm wearing multiple hats. Mm-hmm. And my investors came in because the only guarantee I gave them is I will pour my blood and soul and my life into this film and do everything for it that I can do. Mm-hmm. And so that's the promise I made, and that's the promise that I'm going to keep.
But so taking a step back then, what are the plans for Chimera at this time? Obviously, I would imagine you're going to want to circulate this in the film festival market.
Yes. So we were starting to. The film has literally finished just a few weeks ago. Just before Thanksgiving is when I had my last creative session. So the film is just finished. We have started working with Patricia and then a couple of her colleagues to reach out to the film festival programmers and directors. We're focusing very much on the genre sci-fi genre festivals. We're not looking to have an extended run with, maybe a handful of key festivals. I think should do the trick for us. And then we're talking we're reaching out and connecting with and talking to sales agents and distributors to help us monetize this film. So it's still so early that I don't have anything concrete to share. But as soon as I do, I'd be happy to update you on whatever happens.
Sure. But once that's all done, and after the film has kind of gone through the circuit, that's when you're looking at possibly revisiting your next project.
I'm kind of doing them both in parallel. So I'm hoping that, let's say, by the fall of 2018, if we're in production, that'd be fantastic. But even if we're in pre-production by the fall of 2018 and we're shooting in December 2000, over 12 months from now, basically, I'd be very happy with that kind of a timeline.
So for anybody who wants to learn more about you, what you're working on, they want to learn more about Chimera. What kind of interweb presences might you and the film have? Where can they find it? Through any platforms in social media, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. We recently launched our website, and that is www.chimerathemovie.com. We're also on Facebook. It's Chimera 2018. And we have a Twitter account, and we've been very active on Twitter, and we're getting lots of people interested about sci-fi and the film, and Ian and Kathleen and our cast and crew. So our Twitter account is Chimera the Movie, and on Instagram also we are Chimera the Movie. So the only place we're not Chimera the Movie is on Facebook, where we are Chimera 2018.
Fantastic.
Okay. Well, thank you for being with us this time.
This was
fascinating.
This was a great conversation.
Thank you very much. I enjoy talking to you. I mean, we went off in a few tangents here.
Hey, it was fascinating. I mean, it was nice to get to know you through this dialogue. And it was great to be able to talk about the movie and get to understand it better. So thank you very much for being on our show. I greatly appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Sounds fantastic.
Hi, this is Maurice Haeems, the writer and director of Chimera, and you are listening to the Two Gay Geeks.
And here's a few selected birthdays for December 18th through December 24th, 2017. December 18th, Mr. Leonard Maltin, and Jacques Pepin, and Steven Spielberg, and Cicely Tyson. And
my gosh!
Oh my gosh! And Charles Wesley, born in 1707.
And who's
Charles Wesley? Well, he wrote over 600 hymns. And he actually was kind of the progenitor of the Methodist movement.
The Wesleyan.
Yes.
I've heard of that term before.
Yes, Charles Wesley. December 19th, Mike Lookinland.
Of
the Brady Bunch. Richard Lakey, Edith Piaf, and that's it for December 19th.
Yeah.
December 20th, Uri Geller. Do you remember Uri Geller from the 60s?
God, he was so popular for bending spoons.
Bending spoons, yes. He's now listed as a magician. He was a psychic
passed
whatever.
himself off as a psychic, and the amazing Randy completely discredited him.
Yep. Also on December 20th, Samuel Mudd, born in 1833.
Any relation to Harry?
Yeah, I think he was the great-great-grandfather of Harry. It's a fact.
It's a fact.
It's a fact. He was an entrepreneur, so...
Well, at 1833, it's got to be more than great-great. It's got to be like great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great.
Well, maybe. Anyway, I think he's related. no matter. December 21st, Frank Zappa and Samuel L. M.F. Jackson. Jackson.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. December 22nd, Robin Gibb and Maurice Gibb. I guess
Actually, it's
are they
Morris.
brothers?
Actually, it's Morris Gibb.
Morris Gibb.
They were fraternal twins.
They were twins. Rafe Fiennes, Barbara Billingsley, Giacomo Puccini, and friend of ours and friend of the show, Russ Kazmierczak, who is a comic book artist in his own right.
And independent talk show host.
And Monkeys aficionado, and all of that kind of neat stuff. December 23rd, Finn Wolfhard from Stranger Things.
Oh, okay.
And Joseph Smith. The Joseph Smith. Yes.
Oh, okay.
December 24th, Michael Curtiz.
Who we just happened to, we saw his name on a movie screen the other day.
We watched White Christmas. We've got to see it on the big screen. First time on the big screen. I didn't realize that his birthday was Christmas Eve. So
How appropriate.
Also on December 24th, Kit Carson, whose name was actually Christopher. Kit is a shortening of Christopher, a friend of ours.
Is it?
A friend of mine that I grew up in high school was named Kit. But his real name, it is.
Oh, it is it?
It is. Also on December 24th, Howard Hughes.
No relation.
Nope. And Gene Turnbow.
I should point out,
Mr. Krypton Radio.
The reason I say no relation is that my family's name, my stepdad's name was Hughes. And no relation.
And that's it for the birthdays this time.
Hi, my name is Joe Hogan, and I'm a geek. And if you're currently listening to this, there's a good chance you're a geek too. So check out my podcast, Geektitude. Each week, I talk with somebody about their geek aptitude. Sometimes I talk to people in a geeky profession. Sometimes it's someone doing something really cool with their geekiness. Often it's another geeky podcaster. But it's always someone who wants to share their inner geek. So join me each week as we come together to geek out about all the geeky stuff we love. And remember, this week, keep it geek.
Go give a listen to our friend Joe over at Geektitude. And now we're not going to have any feedback.
Nope.
Because we're saving it for January feedback-a-palooza.
But that'll only happen if
you comment.
Please.
And we would love to receive your comments, especially about this interview that we did today with Maurice. I'm very much looking forward to when that releases. We saw it. We've released our review, and let us know what you think about it, and let us know what you think about the interview. If you want to, you can leave us a voicemail, or you can... Where am I going? I don't know. I've jumped all the way to the end of this script here. You can leave us feedback on our Facebook page on TG Squared Studios. You can leave it at tggeeks.com on any of our articles or any of our webcast episodes. And you can also give us your feedback via voicemail at 469-TG-GEEKS. That is 469-844-3357. Please play nice.
Yeah, baby. They're like two gay geeks. They're together, you know. They're two gay guys and they're geeks. Is that okay?
Well, I will. Okay, yeah, we have no second segment, but there is one thing that I want to comment on, and that is the interview that we had with Maurice Haeems. He later that was his first interview.
Yep.
Ever.
Yep.
And he was a little uncertain, maybe a little nervous, perhaps. He came off as a complete pro. And he thanked us for helping him to feel relaxed. And he later told us that he had a fun time.
Well, that's good. I'm glad he did, and it was a great interview. And that's kind of our MO, is we like to let people feel a little laid back and just conversational, and just
want to have
talk
a chat.
to them. Yeah. So that's always a good thing. As always, we have our follow-up items, calendar, Film festivals, if you have something, let us know. Send us a note. We'll put it on the calendar. Phoenix Comic-Con, May 24th through 27th. Arizona Opera presents Candide, Leonard Bernstein's opera featuring the famed Glitter and Be Gay. This production is part of the worldwide celebration of Bernstein's 100th anniversary. 100th anniversary? 100th. Yeah. And in, where am I going? Tucson, January 27th.
You're going to Tucson?
Yes, we're going to Tucson. In January 27th and 28th, the Candide will be performing there, or Arizona Opera will be performing in Tucson, and in Phoenix on February 2nd through 4th. Tickets are still available at azopera.org. Check out the third edition of Podcasting for Dummies, written by T. Morris and Chuck Tomasi. Go to podcastingfordummies.com. And always a shout out to GoDaddy. Thanks for everything.
Special shout out to, wait a minute. I'm jumping the script now.
You're jumping the script.
Well, because you paused.
Because I paused, yes.
I paused. I thought you were done.
You were already down in your section.
Yeah.
Oh boy, we need a vacation, and that's why we're
doing this now.
Yeah,
you get to hear how
this is like the fourth episode we've recorded today.
Yeah, you get to hear how messed up we really are when we're tired.
As always, we are huge supporters of independent creators, just like Maurice. We love to support them and get the word out about their stuff that they do, whether it's filmmakers, comic book artists, writers, etc. We found that there's a lot of talent out there, and they don't get a whole lot of the fame and fortune or the big money. So if you hear about somebody doing crowdfunding or raising money for an independent project, please consider supporting them. You will be forever in their debt.
Yes.
Or they will be forever in your...
We know what you mean.
Anyway, please consider supporting independent creators.
And
now it's your turn.
And this is why we have a script, although I'm sure at some other point, at some other day, we'd be saying, script? We don't need no stinking script. Well, yeah, obviously we do.
Yes.
So, special shout out to Doctor Who Talking Who on Twitter. You can find them by searching at Talking Who. And we mention them because they publish the Doctor Who Fancast Guide, which republishes our stories, and we thank them for that. Much like we also like to thank Brian Weber. On Twitter, he is the Human Arkle. You can find him at ARKLE, and he publishes the Arkle Times Post-Dispatch News, which republishes much of our own content. So we thank Brian and Doctor Who Talking Who for that. And for more Brian goodness, you can always go to his Tumblr page. We'll have the link for it. It is the Incorrect Star Trek Voyager Quotes. Check it out. Have a laugh. Just don't get caught while you're doing it at work.
And we want to give a shout out to the Lookie Show on Twitter and their YouTube show, Lookie Show. They do have a unique perspective and presentation style of older movies and television shows.
Special shout out to the Facebook group, The Gay Geek, for allowing us to post our episodes on their most awesome geekiness page. Geekiness page?
Yeah.
I just made that up. Their geeky page, filled of geeky goodness. And the URL is facebook.com/group/The Gay Geek. And as always, a very special thanks to their moderator, Jeremiah Reeves, for saying, here, share your stuff on our page.
Thanks, Jeremiah. We want to remind you to occasionally click on our Amazon ads. You can find those at the bottom of each article and webcast episode, as well as widgets on the side of the page for various things that we're kind of hawking for guests that we've had and people that we know. Check them out. If you want to buy something from Amazon, you please use one of our search ads, and we get a little bit of a kickback. And lastly, check us out on iHeartRadio and Spreaker and SoundCloud and every place else that you can imagine. We've got an iTunes. Please subscribe to our iTunes YouTube channel and iTunes, as well as rate us on iTunes. And go ahead and listen on YouTube. It's kind of interesting. We need some more listeners to get up there. And just check out our YouTube channel for other things that we're doing, like some of our trailers, movie trailers.
Our first looks, things like that.
Yeah. Up next time is Mr. Jeffrey Thorne, the showrunner for the Disney XD Avengers Black Panther Quest. And he's going to be a really good interview. So check it out.
Like herding cats.
Yes. Okay.
Did I just derail you?
It did. Because it's true. And we've already recorded that interview.
Yeah,
so.
Just be warned. That episode is,
it's all over the board.
That interview is nuts.
That should do it for this episode of TG Geeks Webcast. Be sure to check out the article for this webcast episode. We're going to have several links on the page. And remember, you can comment on our Facebook page or our website, tggeeks.com. Or you can leave us a voicemail at 469-TG-GEEKS. That is 469-844-3357. I am Keith Lane, coming from you from TG Squared Studios. Thanks for listening. I bid you peace.
Cheers.